What up?
What's happening? What's happening? I still haven't figured out exactly how to work this webinar stuff. I was waiting for you to come in the practice mode. I got to figure out how to work that. Anyway, all right. So usually the attendance is much higher, but I didn't think about the fact that this is taking place like right before spring break. Like
Yeah.
So like 90% of the students are off somewhere, probably drunk right now. But nevertheless, I'm happy that you're here. I'll make sure that what we do will be recorded, and I'll make sure I send it out post haste after spring break. How are you?
Good. Just trying to work on this book. It's not going the way I wanted to, but when does writing ever do what you wanted to do when you need it?
It never does. It never does. So we'll make this relatively short, since the people who are here probably want to go get ready for spring break and get ready to go. So, okay. Hi, Regina. How are you? I haven't seen you in forever. It has been so long.
I know. I feel like I'm supposed to be on sabbatical, but I still haven't hit it. Not even in March.
So you're on sabbatical working on your next book. Am I guessing that's what's going on?
Yeah, working on the collection of essays. So we'll see how that goes.
Looking forward to reading that. But let's just kind of get into this. So I want to talk, well, first of all, welcome everybody to Critical Conversations. My name is Lawrence Ware. I am the Associate Director of the Center for Africana Studies. Happy to have you guys here. Again, sorry, I did not realize that it was right before spring break. So I am so sorry that I planned this when I did. I thought I had a week. I was a little bit off. So my deepest apologies for making you guys do this stuff right before spring break. But nevertheless, so happy to have you, Regina. Why don't you just introduce yourself to the people who are here? Just who are you? Where are you? Where do you reside? Where do you work? And then we'll get into the book here in a second. But who are you?
All right. So hey, what's up, everybody? Happy pre-spring break. I am Dr. Regina Bradley. I'm an associate professor of English and African Diaspora Studies at Kennesaw State, which is about 30 minutes north of Atlanta on a good day, but there's never really a good day because traffic. So
traffic's terrible. Traffic's terrible.
That. Yep. I'm the author of Chronicling Stankonia, The Rise of the Hip Hop South, as well as the editor of An Outcast Reader, both of which came out last year.
2 books in 1 year. That's intense. What in the heck were you thinking doing 2 books in 1 year? What's going on with that?
I mean, it wasn't on purpose, you know what I'm saying? They just happened to, they finished around the same time. So, you know, what can you do?
Crazy. I can't believe you came out with 2 books in 1 year. We'll talk about the book that you're working on or allegedly working on here, towards the end of this. But I want to talk about Outcast first of all.
Yeah, we'll do it.
But before we talk about Outcast, let's first talk about hip hop. All right. So I'm not quite a historian of hip hop, but I'm a big hip hop head, as I'm sure you know. Mm-hmm. And just talk to me about what is it about hip hop that made you think it was worthy of academic inquiry? Now, look, stop, pause. I know you rolling your eyes. You're like, why is he asking me this question? Let me tell you why I'm asking the question. Okay. It's not because I'm asking the question. It's because there are people who are asking the question.
Yeah, no problem.
And so for the people who are asking the question, why is hip hop worthy of this academic inquiry? Like it ain't like jazz or anyway, blues, whatever. You tell me in your own words why you thought hip hop was worthy of academic inquiry, and then we'll kind of narrow it down to Outkast in a second. So why hip hop?
Because hip hop frames so much of how I see the world as a Black person, as a Black woman. What I mean by that is, I talk about this in the book, is I was basically raised by my grandparents. My dad came home a couple years after that, but my grandparents are like my parents. So they grew up in Jim Crow, Georgia, right? So North Georgia and South Georgia is where they're from. They met at our alma mater, Albany State. Mm-hmm. And they had a particular way of looking at things, right? They had a particular way of thinking through and listening to things. I mean, like if it wasn't gospel, then my papa would listen to blues on Saturday, because that was like cleanup music, you know what I'm saying? Before we went and did our Saturday activities, whether it was go to the football game or whatever. So hip hop wasn't out for me. It was a way for me to actually like try to figure out my own thoughts about the world around me before I in addition to what my folks expected me to think about the world around me. And in terms of, actually trying to study it, it was graduate school. I had a class with Dr. Portia Molesby, who was like the godmother of Black popular music studies. And we were having all these amazing conversations, and she was introducing us to all of these ethnomusicologists and theorists. And we got to our unit on hip hop, and I was like, I feel left out of the conversation. All these folks talking about New York or Cali, maybe Chicago, every once in a blue moon, you know what I'm saying? But as somebody who's from Georgia, you know what I mean? I'm like, why we ain't part of the conversation? There's nothing I can use here to talk about what I'm listening to in my car at the time. You know what I'm saying? So I guess that's when the seed was planted. It wasn't until I finished my dissertation that I actually really started thinking about Southern, like region is part of the conversation about why hip hop hits the way that it does or doesn't, you know what I'm saying? So it was an organic process. I mean, like, like you, I've been a student of the culture, you know what I'm saying, knocking on 40 years now. But as a scholar, my interest is more so in thinking about the significance of Southernness as we relate to hip hop, because even though the South is on top in terms of, when people think hip hop, there's certain things they go to, like trap, for example. Where does that come from? It comes from the South. There's very little scholarship in place about why the South is significant to hip hop culture. And as somebody who is Southern and also, you know what I'm saying, a hip hop head, so to speak, I refuse to let somebody who's not familiar with the South try to tell me what hip hop means to me as a Southerner. It was like a petty reason. It's like a petty reason for the most part. It's like, that's like me going up to the boroughs and being like, yo, hip hop's important to New York, because I can't do that.
Right. You can't. No, you're right. You can't. I mean, look, I love Southern hip hop, to be sure. Absolutely love Outkast, love UGK. I'm really more partial to Houston stuff. But I love Southern hip hop. But I'm gonna be honest, my heart is in the East Coast. But I'm not gonna go there with you. I'm not gonna get into no fight.
I'm not knocking it though. I just feel like, in the same way that your heart's in the East Coast, same way that my heart is below the Mason-Dixon line. So it's all love. I can say like I love Field Mob as quick as I love Mobb Deep. You know what I'm saying? But it's Field Mob being where I'm from, it's different.
Oh my gosh! Don't make me start playing. We can do a soundtrack to our talk, because I have no problem turning on some Nuck If You Buck if I have to. Anyway, all right. So, I see what you're talking about as far as Southern hip hop. But why specifically did you zero in on Outkast? Because you could have gone UGK, you could have gone Field Mob, as you said. You could have gone Ghetto Boys, for example. Of course, I'm thinking a lot of Houston folks. But you could have gone anywhere. What made you think that Outkast was the one? What made you zero in on Outkast?
Outkast is my absolute favorite group of all time. That's where it starts.
I hear you.
That's where it starts. Right. The second thing is that
stop. Why?
Outkast is my absolute favorite group of all time because they were courageous enough to be themselves, like to be able to experiment. And there was no shame of being Southern. There was no shame of being Black. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I was about to say is just, for me growing up in Southwest Georgia at the time, I didn't know what it meant to be a contemporary Black Southerner. I had no role models, no examples, because remember, my grandparents were virgin me. So it was like, if it wasn't in the church, or if it wasn't on a gospel tape, then I was out of luck. So I mean, like Outkast was the group that I was continuously going back to. Like they're like the soundtrack to so many significant moments in my life. When I first moved to Albany in '98, it was hearing them on Black Ice by Goody Mob. When I first started knowing how to drive on my own, that was when Stankonia came out. When my husband was pitching the woo, so to speak, you know what I mean? Like one of the, I don't even know if you remember these, Law, but it's like them little email cards you can send. They had like little music.
I remember those.
So like after our first date, my now husband, then we weren't even together yet, sent me prototype from the Love Below to be like, you know what I'm saying? When we got married to International Players Anthem. So it's like Outkast has always been.
Really?
Yeah, we did.
Oh, crazy. That's crazy.
We did. My grandma didn't know what was going on.
I bet she did.
Yeah, so I mean, like they've always been a significant part in how I see myself and how I experience these things, and they're always related to my southernness. You know what I'm saying? So that's why Outkast. And then I say this too is like, as much as I love Ghetto Boys, UGK, Scarface, you know what I'm saying, all of these folks, it's like I know that there is somebody from Houston who could hold that conversation on lock, which is like why I think Southern hip hop's understanding that Southern hip hop studies is a thing, right? Like the South ain't monolithic. So the way that I experienced growing up in Georgia is different than somebody like Mako Faniel or Langston Colin Wilkins who grew up in Houston. You know what I'm saying? But we're in conversation with each other. I just feel like my comfort level, I guess, and my passion is with Georgia, because that's where you know what I'm saying? That's where I came up. So that's like my starting point, right? But the thing that's dope is that I can be in conversation with these other folks who grew up in these other areas who could put me on game. Like, you know what I'm saying? Our good dude, Kiese Layman, grew up in Mississippi. So he's more comfortable with Texas, or Zandria Robinson, who came up in Memphis. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're all having the conversation. It's just, you know, we bringing a different dish to the cookout.
Oh, Regina, I love you. I love you, metaphors. So when Southern hip hop, and we'll get you the book here in a second, but when Southern hip hop kind of began to kind of bubble up and kind of gain a foothold, there was a great deal of animosity and skepticism among folks from the East Coast to the rise of Southern hip hop. Did you feel any kind of that with what you were doing, right? Mm-hmm. So for example, in the same way that Southern hip hop was viewed kind of suspiciously, people have for a very long time taken East Coast hip hop seriously academically. Right. But Southern hip hop, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but because I'm not as deep in the field as you are, but I get to feel that it's kind of new on the field. It's kind of new. And so did you feel any of that suspicion that the original Southern hip hop folks felt when you were entering the field?
I mean, yeah. And you're right, is that there is a very limited supply of Southern hip hop scholarship. You know what I mean? Like for the longest, folks were using this white dude, Darren Grimm's article, The South Got Something to Say, which if you're familiar with Southern hip hop, you're like, this is like surface level shit, right? Like this is like surface. This is what, if, you know, this is like almost like an encyclopedia entry, not knocking what he did, you know what I'm saying? But realizing that he don't write nothing else about Southern hip hop. We ain't heard nothing else from Darren Grimm about Southern hip hop, right? But 2 years before that is Amani Perry, who comes out with her book, Prophets of the Hood. And she's the first to actually theorize and put Outkast in academic conversation, at least for me. I'm like, I hadn't seen anybody else doing that. And then it's like it's like radio silence, you know what I'm saying? You know, to put things in further perspective, the first formal hip hop studies book, Black Noise, was published in 1994. And then you have Amani Perry, who references it, but it's not a study on Southern hip hop. That's 2004. You have Joycelyn Wilson, who was doing journalism, but is also, you know, she has a PhD now. She did her dissertation on Outkast, which came out in 2008. And yet and still, it wasn't until my book in 2021 that you actually get a Southern focused analysis. You know what I mean? So, right. You know, you have like these moments in it. In terms of, you know, the pushback, I guess, yeah, of course there's going to be pushback, especially from folks who already kind of look down their nose at the region itself. You know what I mean? Southern Black folks are supposed to be slow and backwards, and you know what I'm saying, and all of these things that make non-Southern Black folks comfortable. You know what I'm saying? Not even just non-Southern Black folks, just in general. Without realizing that a lot of the music that we call it, quote unquote, Black people's music came from where? The South. Blues, jazz, hip hop, funk, You know what I mean? And I mean, like with funk music, you got it in the South, but I'm like the Midwest just makes it a completely different thing. I'm not gonna sit here and denounce.
Right.
But where are those roots at though? You know what I'm saying? So the one thing that I tell folks is that if you're gonna study the South in hip hop, it is damn near impossible to use the scholarship that's already in place because we're not even part of the conversation to begin with. It's kind of like if I was, you know what I mean? It's like if I'm teaching a Southern hip hop class, which I am in the fall, and then like the only things that I use are like Trisha Rose, Mark Anthony Neal, Nelson George. I mean, like great scholars, great thinkers, but very little attention to the South. How I'm going to contextualize an experience that I'm not even part of, right? Which goes back to that point where you're talking about, you know, for me and Outkast at the Source Awards in '95, and Andre was like, the South got something to say. And I always tell folks it's significant because he doesn't say Atlanta got something to say. He doesn't say that Outkast got something to say. He said that the South, which becomes this rallying cry, right? Like, it's like we kicked the door open and we ain't looking back, and we haven't looked back since since the cry, right? I think the challenge for a lot of folks is trying to, you know, merge that anxiety about the South in general with hip hop, which is supposed to be established as not only a space to voice frustrations and concerns about being Black and brown in urban places, right? But also there's supposed to be a particular type of sophistication that was associated with hip hop itself, right? You listen to the pure hip hop heads, and I know we like to mess around when you give us these controversial opinions that you got on Facebook, and you get to really see the folks where folks line up. But it's like, I think the thing that's the challenge is that we're trying to have like a one size fits all for hip hop, and it hasn't been like that since the 70s or 80s. And folks don't want to move out their comfort zone. In the same way that, you know, the old heads like us who were like, well, you know, there was these things called record stores, and we used to actually listen to these things. And it's like, even the way that we just consume the culture now because of social media and technology has once again shifted how we should talk about it, you know what I mean? But unfortunately, we're still playing catch up on so many of these previous experiences that we haven't got to the new stuff yet. We haven't got to the digital hip hop culture era. You know what I mean?
We still in the CD era academically. I mean, like we not. I mean, really cassette era. I mean, we haven't even gotten to the digital era. We're not ready to talk about the most recent stuff. But let's talk. So you had this broad conversation. Now let's kind of zero in on your book now.
Yeah,
so what did you find? Because I'm trying to ask you questions that other folks don't ask. Because I know you get the same boring questions, and I ain't trying to be plus, I know you well enough that I could just be real with you. So what was difficult about putting this book together, about writing this book? Like what was the most challenging thing for you when it came to putting this book together?
Oh my God, not knowing if it was researched enough.
What do you mean?
What I mean by that is it was so hard to find scholarship to back up what I was saying, because that's just academics 101, right? Like I have this argument, well, let's see what sources you have to support your argument. And I'm like, well, ain't now, you know what I'm saying? Like ain't now, you know what I mean? Like there's like one or two, like I mentioned the Grimm article, you know what I'm saying? Ali Colleen Neff writes about Mississippi blues or Mississippi hip hop blues in the Delta. That's not really helping with what I'm trying to write about, right? So that was the challenge, is being able to show that I had done my homework. Like, no, I'm not just, you know what I'm saying, pulling this out my head. This is like, I actually sat with this and thought about it and theorized it.
I mean, but I think that's a challenge that comes with, you know, breaking new ground academically or, you know, intellectually. Like there is no one that's really your peer, really. Not really, you know, not zeroing in on Atlanta, not zeroing in on Outkast, right? So you have to kind of just go and don't really worry as much about, you know, footnotes and all that kind of stuff. But of course, I know in the academic world, you know, there's a lot of skepticism to that. But to be honest, that's just the reality of it, is it not?
Yeah, I mean, like that's the reality when you're working on some stuff that nobody felt was worthy of study more rigorously, right? Like that's the other challenge is oh, is the work that Dr. Bradley does rigorous enough to be considered, quote unquote, true scholarship? And my question is, I want to see you do it then if it's so unrigorous, you know what I mean? Right. And I'm like, I'll wait. I'll wait.
And you still waiting.
I'm still waiting. Like I'm still waiting. I mean, like if I would have followed what so many, like there were a couple of folks who was like, oh, well, you're not writing academically enough. You're not talking about this, and that. I think the biggest pushback that I got is when I was talking about this idea of Southern Black literature. And there are folks who were like, oh, well, you should, you know what I'm saying? You should talk about Faulkner. And I'm like, fuck no, I'm not gonna talk about Faulkner for what?
Yeah, Faulkner's any conversation.
Yeah. Like it was like, I think the thing that, you know what I'm saying, folks were wilding on is like, I don't need white folks scholarship to talk about Black people shit. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because, definitely. Yeah, it's like, why would I do that and you don't focus on me? Like, show me where white scholars are centering Black folks from a perspective that shows their complicated, flawed, but wonderful humanic self. Like, it ain't gonna happen. Mm-hmm. And then when you do, I mean, like, when you decenter folks who are expected to be the center of conversation, that breaks from normalcy. And when you break from normalcy, that's like you said, that's when the new ground is broken. And sometimes folks trip, but that's okay because you need new models. You need new language to make these things legible. So, it is what it is.
So what was the response? Both good and bad. Like, were you encouraged by the response to the first? But we'll get to the reader in a second. But were you encouraged by it? Were you discouraged by it? I'm sure it was a mixture of both. I kind of went through that journey with you, actually. But I mean, for those who don't know you, I mean, what was that journey like?
It was rough because some days I was like, I'm on the right track. Other days I was like, this ain't even gonna make it past, saving the file. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But when it was out in the wild, so to speak, is public others out in the wild, it's been amazing, yo. It's like it's been overwhelmingly positive because it was actually reaching the folks I wanted to reach, which was other Southern hip hop fans. You know what I'm saying? And the one thing that made me be like, okay, it might not get the recognition of more traditional scholarship was like folks like they felt seen. That's the thing that got me. It was like they felt seen in the work in ways they hadn't felt seen in other scholarship. You know what I mean? So there was that. And then of course you got there's a couple of discouraging remarks, or so to speak. And it was more so along the lines of, why are you trying to fetishize Southern hip hop? And did you have enough critical distance? And I'm just like, so y'all basically are pulling at straws. You ain't got nothing on me. You ain't got nothing on me. Which is something that I tell students all the time. I'm like, it's okay to start with a personal experience or personal question to get your scholarship started. That's what started with me. I was like, why is it that the South is not in more contemporary conversations? Why is it that people are listening to Southern hip hop, but there's not any really serious discussion of it besides, the barbershops and cafeteria tables? You know what I mean? Like I tell my students, I'm like, y'all have been doing peer review your whole life. Your first real peer review experience is at the cafeteria table. I'm like, don't come over here like when I was in high school, you know what I'm saying? It was like, don't be trying to like have conversations about the music and all you've done is listen to the radio singles. Because folks gonna call you out. You know what I'm saying? So it was important for me to be able to bridge academic and non-academic audiences together. And I feel like for the most part, I did a pretty decent job of that with Chronicling Stankonia. There's a couple of places I was like, yeah, this is hella academic. And I was like, okay, this sounds like this sounds academic. But I mean, like, for the most part, I was like, okay, I can rock with this. This is all right.
One of the things that I always have a problem with scholars is that they oftentimes write in ways that is inaccessible to everyday people, right? They only write to other scholars, and they're not writing. And that's one of the things that I've always kind of made sure that I did was make sure I write in popular publications and whatnot, because I want to make sure that the stuff that I'm writing and I'm thinking about actually reaches people who actually care about it. Right. When you're writing a whole bunch of scholarship and scholars are reading it, they might care, they might not care, they might respect it, they might not respect it. But one of the things that I always appreciated about this book is that this is a book that scholars can read and get something from, but most importantly, that everybody can read. Who's anybody who's a fan of Southern hip hop. People who like metalheads probably don't care, but people who are fans of Southern hip hop, fans of Outkast, because it's Outkast is at the center of the book, but one of the things that I noticed that you did is that you centered Outkast, but it was a larger discussion about Southern hip hop writ large. Not Southern hip hop. It was about Southern hip hop, but mostly about Georgia hip hop, I guess I should say. That kind of region of it. And I always appreciated. Was that something that you were intentional about? Were you reading the book and going through the line edits that are dreaded, that we hate to go through? And were you thinking to yourself, is this something that is too academic? Is this something that's too popular? And how did you make the decision of, when is it too academic and when is it too popular? Or how did you do that balancing act?
Oh, I love that question, because I don't know how I did it. What's wild is that when I was doing the line edits, and I had to go by line, was that, once I got to that stage, that's it. That terrified me, right?
Yeah.
I'm a perfectionist, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, I could have said this better. I thought I included this, and because it's, you know what I mean. And it gets to the point where by the time that you get your manuscript back for that second to last final step, it's kind of like, I thought that was probably my biggest thing was like, okay, so I write about the trap, right? And I'm like, okay, this strikes the balance.
Hold on for a second. I need you to explain what the trap is.
So, so the trap, you know what I mean, is more than just deep synthesizers based and talking about drugs and culture. It actually came from a particular set of experiences for working class Southern Black men who were dealing and stuff like that. Right. So T.I. branded trap music. He ain't started, but he branded it in a particular way, you know what I mean? To the point where now it is an international export of hip hop, you know what I mean? There are, folks in Japan are using trap beats, so Lil Nas X, his producer for Old Town Road, did a trap beat from the Netherlands. So it's kind of like, there's that aspect.
Didn't know that.
I know, right? So when I was writing about trap as a grieving space, for example, because a lot of T.I.'s music, especially his older music, is him working through personal grief, like grieving himself, grieving his boys, grieving his decisions that he made. And then after his best friend got shot to death in front of him, that was center to his music. You know what I'm saying? And that was important to contextualize because it helped me to get through my dad's unexpected death too. It was like, okay, so he's grieving, I'm grieving, you know what I mean? I was thinking about this trap in a particular way. And then I started thinking about it more at large, and I'm kind of going back to the Faulkner thing. I'm like, Jesmyn Ward is arguably the best writer of our generation, hands down.
Agreed.
And all you can do is use an early 20th century dead white dude to talk about what makes her writing so gorgeous. I need to get out of here with that. Right. And I'm like, her first novel, Where the Line Bleeds, is a trap novel. You got two brothers. One's trying to have a legal.
I didn't think of it like that. But that's a good point.
Right? It really one was trying to do right, so by working on the docks, you know what I mean. Right. And the other twin couldn't get real work, so what did he do? He started to deal. So it was and he dealt because he didn't want to. And then you get her talking about her brother, Christopher, before he passed. Was dealing because he couldn't find steady work, and then when he did find steady work, he stopped. So I think it's important to be able to, point out those nuances. I think the chapter that I felt the chapter that was most out of balance with the rest of the book was actually the chapter about slavery and hip hop. I felt like that was my, I guess, trying to show you I can be strictly rigorous academic, right? With my literary analysis.
I like that chapter. I thought that chapter was really good. Why?
Well, I didn't say it was good, but it was just I felt like that was the most academic one because I kept citing all these different literary and scholarly people. Right. I just felt like it felt most in line with what folks would expect a literary analysis to look like. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Right. but it was when I was going through it, I just wanted to make sure I didn't lose my Gina May voice, if you will. That's what I call her, right? And Gina May voice for me is those personal experiences that shaped how I think about things as a scholar, which is the Dr. Bradley. So I was hoping that folks got a little bit of both. And it really made me feel good to hear you say that it did kind of strike that balance. That was like, okay, so you see the rigor, but you also see the personal and why this topic is so important to me.
Yeah, because you were essentially telling a story with the book, So I mean, it was definitely rigorous and it had the academic parts of it, but there was a through line that was a story, that was a personal story that was intimate to you, that I thought you knocked out of the park. I think you did really, really well, and you did one of the rare things that academic books don't even try to do, but you told a story that was intimate while also being very rigorous. So I thought that was a really, really good balance that you struck with those two things. So we'll get to the reader in a second, but who's your favorite? You got to choose one. Biggie or Andre? You knew the question. You knew the question was coming.
Oh,
and don't give me that, because I'm gonna put my cards on the table here. I actually prefer Big Boy to Andre, personally.
I ain't mad at that. Okay.
I kind of prefer Big Boy to Andre personally. I have reasons for that, but I'm not the one who's doing the talk. You tell me, the scholar of Outkast, which one of those two? Because don't give me that, they're equal, because they're not. They're very different. They're very different.
Man.
And one of the two is going to appeal to you more than the other. Not necessarily saying which one is better.
Yeah.
That's a different question. But which is your favorite of the two and why?
Oh.
Come on, Sora. Oh, I guess you're not supposed to be a Sora right now. Come on.
No, look here, bro. Look, listen. Damn. Okay, so I'm gonna go with 3 stacks for this question. The reason
I knew it. I had a feeling, but tell me why.
I have a reason.
Okay, give me a reason.
No, I think for me, it's the visceral response that I have to the way that he tells a story. Touches me in such a way that I'm like, it's gonna knock against my head for a long time coming. So, like, for example, when he did his verse on Kanye's Life of the Party.
I was just about to ask you that. Yes, go ahead.
So
that touched me, best verse of that year. That touched me so.
I mean, like, I still don't have the words for it, how beautiful that thing was. And the reason that it was so gorgeous for me is because it was like, he was approaching Kanye's mom's spirit so respectfully. Miss Donda, can you ask my mama that Miss Donda, right?
Yeah.
And then it was such a raw confession of grief. You know what I'm saying? That only he could get away with. Like, you know that Donda is Kanye still trying to work through the death of his mother, and you know it's going to be heavy on that instance, but to have Andre come in and like match that grief with the grief that I'm still working through the death of my mother, my father, because it was less than like a year apart, I think, that they both passed. You know what I'm saying? And how difficult that was. And I was like, he's communing with the dead. He is literally communing with the dead in a way that the other guest verses who referenced Kanye's mom, it didn't touch me in the same way. Like Jay-Z was like Donda this and Donda that. And I'm like, it just sounded like the theme of the joint. But like for Andre to be like, Miss Donda. Like it's like
absolutely. It was he had that Southern respectfulness.
That's right. He had that home training. He
absolutely did. And that touched me so much. I'm not gonna say much about this, but I knew Miss Donda actually. She's from Oklahoma City. So I knew her. And so I went to the funeral whenever she passed away, and Kanye was there. And, Pharrell was there, Jay-Z was there. And I've been to, because you go to funerals all the time. I have never seen somebody so broken as I saw Kanye that day at that funeral.
Yeah.
And I knew that things were going to be different with him after that. And it seemed like they really, really kind of tore him asunder. And so coming back to what you were talking about, listening to that verse, I'm just transported back to that day. And it's just it's so fitting for how she was, how she expected to be treated. what she demanded. Like it was a beautiful, beautiful verse. I absolutely love it. My favorite verse of the year. I'm not gonna say it's the best verse of the year. It probably is, but it was an unbelievable verse. And Kanye kind of came on and kind of ruined it. But it was
okay, so it wasn't just me. I was just like, this man has like basically ripped his heart open for you, and then you gonna come after Drake? Get out of here with that.
I kind of didn't like what Kanye did with that song after the fact, but that's neither here nor there. So let's talk about your reader. So talk to me. What were you? Just how did you put that together? Like what? How did you put the reader together? What were you trying to go with that? Because to have two books at the same time, that's very ambitious. Why the reader in addition to the first book?
So two things. It comes from the dialogue series, conversation series that I did on YouTube, Outcasted Conversations.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, okay. I just feel like maybe we should explore some of these things further. So that's where the idea for the reader came from. I think
nice.
The other thing is, I was like, I refuse to be like Highlander, like the one. Like, I don't want to be the only one talking about Outcast. There are things that I might be missing that somebody else is like, oh, well, did you think about this, this, and this? Which is what the reader does. Like, there's some really amazing essays in there that I would have never been able to think about, let alone write to the extent that these folks did. So that was cool. That was real cool. But I just wanted to, I just wanted to expand the canon, man. Like, I just wanted to contribute to the conversation, things that folks are kind of like side glimpsing, but actually show like, no, for real, this is worthy of their body of work is worthy of rigorous study. And this is the contribution that we have towards that.
Mm-hmm. Have you heard anything from anybody in the Outcast about the book? I mean, I know that'd be a dream for like Andre to like be like, yo, man, this book was amazing. But
I mean, that's the dream, right? But I mean, I had some folks who were like, I know their management, so I mean, I sent a copy of the book. You know what I'm saying? And if they read it, that's dope. If not, I just hope that they know that, you know what I'm saying, we trying to hold them down out here in the academy, and just give flowers while we can. But you never know. I might get the call one day.
Have you ever thought about putting together like a playlist or something like that to go along, like putting on Spotify so people can? Or have you already done it? Maybe.
Well, I ain't doing it on Spotify because they on that bullshit. But I'm Tidal. I mean, I mean, like a lot of folks who sent me feedback told me that they had playlists. I never made one. I should make one.
You should definitely make one. I can't believe you made one.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so since you are the resident scholar of Southern hip hop, who's doing it now? Give me. Now, I know you ain't listening only to old folks. Who's doing it? And by the way, I need to come out with a new album. But anyway, and I wish they would come back together and come out with a new album. But whatever. Who's doing it now?
Well, I love Crit. It's awesome to see him. It's awesome to see him evolve, huh?
I don't know why I love Crit, and I don't know why. Like, okay, so full disclosure, Key is one of my best friends. One of my top.
He's one of my best friends too. You ain't special.
He's one of my best friends. Don't start with me. He's one of my best friends. He keeps trying to tell me this dude's amazing, and I hear it. It doesn't connect with me for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know. I don't. It's like maybe it's an emotional distance to it. Maybe I'm not ready for it. I don't know why. It doesn't connect with me for some reason.
I mean, it is what it is. I think the thing that made me most connect to Crit is because there was that nostalgia, I guess. It reminded me of what old school Southern rap is like. I just listened to his new joint, The Digital Roses Don't Die, and it's writing music. It's phenomenal. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
I'll listen to it. Oh, by the way, we're talking about Big Crit, K-R-I-T.
Yeah. So sorry, Big Crit from Meridian, Mississippi. I also like I've been in the trap lately.
Okay. Tell me what you mean.
Yeah, so I mean, like, I felt like I've been playing Dolphin tribute. I just can't believe what happened to that man. That just breaks my heart. But also been on Moneybag Yo heavy rate recently.
Oh God, I love Moneybag Yo so
Yeah,
much.
I'd be like,
So much.
Moneybag Yo is in
Yeah.
regular rotation. But I've been on my R&B kick lately because I'm writing about it in the book. But I mean, like, I call them like the pronouns of R&B, so like sir, they, her. They've been really great. My godson is like my connect to what I should be listening to. So we I give him old school folks to listen to, and he tells me who listen to that's younger. So what is it, Brent, what's his name? Fayez, something like that.
Oh, Brent Fayez.
Yeah. Giveon, I love Giveon. Division is this generation's, baby maker. Like,
noticing
in trouble.
Yeah, Silk. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, like it gets you, what I'm saying? It gets you in trouble. So I mean, like I try to listen to a lot of the new stuff, but I'm not as rigorous in my analysis of what it means, because it's kind of like more passive listening. But it's also making room for, this younger generation of scholars to come up and be like, all right, well, the same thing that Dr. Bradley was doing with Outkast, I'm gonna do it with Future. I'm gonna do it with, what I'm saying, Magnolia Cardi. I'm gonna do it with whoever. So
I mean, and maybe it's because I'm old. But when I listen to contemporary hip hop, I just don't get the depth, that we grew up with. But again, it could be that I'm old.
I think it's because we old, bruh. I just think
it might be, but it doesn't, like, there's no depth. Okay, Moneybag Yo, yes, he has some depth there. Little Baby, I don't love the auto-tune stuff, but yes, there's some depth there. Even the Baby, I know the Baby is like out of vogue now, but there's a little bit of depth there. Don't laugh at me. But like, when I listen to like Cardi B, not that much depth. Megan Thee Stallion, there's depth there. But I don't know. I'm old. I guess I'm old.
But it's also like, I think the other thing too is something that those of us that are older, we're like, there's not enough time in the song for us to get into what the depth is. Like, most of these songs stop at like 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So it's like by the time you're like, oh, okay, they talking about,
it's over.
That's it. I'm like, what? This is it. This is it. But yeah, I just think, that has something to do with it. And then I think the other part of it too is, man, like, I'm not the intended audience, and I'm cool with that. You know what I'm saying? It's like maybe the depth and the messages, they ain't for me knocking on 40. You know what I'm saying? Like, it ain't for you. This ain't your Thursday night turn up, in the same way that, what I'm saying, older generations before us felt about hip hop before the 90s. They were like, y'all know what y'all listening to. So it's like, it's okay. I don't mind being on the porch shaking my fist a little bit. You can play on the lawn, but when I tell you to get off, get off. Get
off the lawn. I know that's right. Oh, so what are you writing now? What are you working on? Let's wrap it up. What are you working on?
Yeah. So I'm working on the academic term is like a critical autoethnography of personal essays. The biggest pushback that I got from Chronicling Stankonia was that I didn't talk about women enough. And I was like, you're right. But I knew that if I would have tried to do that, then there would be no book to talk about. I still probably be writing. So this is just the next book project. So thinking about, what hip hop meant to me growing up in the South, along the same veins as Zora Neale Hurston, right? So like there's a lot of renewed interest in Zora Neale Hurston. My interest is kind of thinking through what some of her research area interests were. So like supernatural, Black women, sex, literacy, stuff like that, and just updating it to kind of think about what those things look like in the contemporary Black South, using personal experience as a jumping off point.
But I thought you said you were working on something about R&B though.
Yeah, that's part of it. It's like, it's thinking about, there's a section in there that is tentatively titled You've Got Your Woman on You, which is from Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Are Watching God. And it talks about, what sexual awakening looks like. And for me, that's rooted in R&B more so than hip hop. So it was like the Drew Hills and the 112s, and you know what I mean? Like, I joke about it, but it's true. It was like the hormones like officially came on with D'Angelo's How Does It Feel video. And I was like, yo, I too want to know how it feels. So I mean, like, I mean, like the R&B played a part of it.
I can't with you. I can't with you. I can't hear that and not think about him screaming at the end and what that reminded me of. I'm not going there.
No, you know what's hilarious is that everybody who saw that video feels the same way. I know exactly what you're talking about. Because ain't no way.
Okay, there was a little death. That's all I'm gonna say. There was a little death in that moment. That's all I'm gonna say. I can't say no more. This is an academic space and I'm at work. You can say what you want to, but I can't say it. But there was something that happened. There was something.
I mean, like I was like, okay.
Oh gosh, I can't with you, Regina. I appreciate you coming to hang out with me tonight. It has been so much fun. I love you so much. I will be in touch. But thank you so much for coming to hang out with me, and thank you for those of you who are here that came to hang out with us. I'll make sure that I send out a link so that those who couldn't be here can hang out and hear what we had to say. Thank you, Regina.
Yeah, no doubt. Thank y'all, and enjoy your spring break. Turn up, relax, recharge, reset. It's so important, especially now.
Absolutely. Thank you. Bye.
All right. Y'all be easy.
Bye.